The sky above Denver had a weight to it, a dense, oppressive gray that pressed down like judgment itself. Rain streaked the glass of high-rise windows, each droplet tracing a path as if reluctant to leave the storm behind. Inside the offices of Monrovia Corp., the hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, indifferent to the tension that simmered in the conference room. A warning had been issued weeks ago, but in human fashion, hubris, ambition, arrogance, it had been dismissed. Ignored. Dr. Emily Carter sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, her fingers drumming lightly against the polished surface. She had been the one to deliver the warning, the one to beg, to reason. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," she had said, voice low but firm, as if the walls themselves might overhear. The executives had smiled politely, murmured reassurances, and turned their attention to numbers and growth charts. Emily's gaze drifted to the rain beyond the window, tracing the blurred outlines of the city. The warning had not been a metaphor, nor a vague prediction. It was a guarantee, a certainty. The kind of certainty that carries a price tag attached to human error, a toll paid in suffering. Across the table, Michael Hayes, Monrovia's CEO, shuffled papers with an impatient air. His sharp jawline and slicked back hair gave him the polished aura of control, yet Emily could see the tension flicker in his dark eyes. "Dr. Carter," he said finally, voice smooth, rehearsed, "we appreciate your concerns, really. But our projections indicate minimal risk. The board has voted. We move forward. Forward. Always forward." Emily's stomach churned. She thought of the quiet nights alone in her lab, watching the subtle, unsettling shifts in the experiment's readings. Shadows that shouldn't be there. Frequencies that hummed in the dark. She had sent memos, arranged private briefings, and still, nothing. A distant rumble of thunder shook the building. The lights flickered briefly, and a hush fell over the room. Even the men and women who had mocked her warnings stiffened slightly. Emily's breath caught. That rumble was not just weather. It was a signal. A reminder. Then came the first unmistakable sound, the knocking. Not on the walls, nor the windows, but on something invisible. It resonated through the floorboards, a slow, deliberate thump, a rhythm that suggested intelligence behind it. The executives exchanged nervous glances, but Michael waved it off with a dismissive hand. "Building settling," he said, but his voice wavered, betraying his doubt. Emily didn't answer. She stood, moving toward the window, feeling a chill crawl up her spine. The storm outside had intensified, lightning splitting the sky with a brilliance that made the cityscape below look fragile, insignificant. She could feel it even through the reinforced glass. Something had awakened. The knocking grew louder, now echoing inside the walls themselves, the floor vibrating in sync with it. Heart pounding, Emily turned to face the room. Her colleagues were pale, whispering in hushed tones. You said it would come if we didn't listen," one junior scientist stammered, voice trembling. Emily nodded, a shadow of grim determination crossing her features. "I warned you. I told you humans don't pardon. And we ignored the warning. They are here." No one spoke after that. The hum of fluorescent lights seemed distant now, replaced by the steady, unrelenting thrum of something ancient, patient, and merciless. A sudden crash shattered the room's fragile calm. Papers flew like startled birds as the doors blew open with a force that rattled the walls. The storm outside seemed to press against the building, winds howling as if angry at human folly. Emily reached instinctively for Michael's arm. "We need to get out now." He tried to protest, but the words caught in his throat. Something massive had moved beyond the walls, something that didn't belong to this world. The air thickened, carrying a scent metallic and acrid, like ozone and burned iron. From the shadows of the corridor, two figures emerged, not fully visible, their shapes fluctuating with the erratic lighting. The sound of their movement wasn't mechanical, nor entirely organic. It was wrong. "Humans," Emily whispered under her breath. "You thought there'd be no price." Before anyone could react, the figures advanced. The room's temperature plummeted, and the light flickered violently. In that moment, every human present understood the truth: ignorance was no shield. Hubris was a leash that had led them straight to this reckoning. The knocking continued, relentless. And with it, the knowledge settled deep into their bones: the world had changed. They had ignored the warning, and now, the cost would be paid, not in numbers, not in charts, but in the raw, uncompromising currency of survival. Emily's hand shot to the console, attempting to override the building's security systems. Lights flashed red, alarms blared, and somewhere deep within the walls, the figures paused, as if amused. "They don't forgive," Emily said, voice trembling but steady. "They don't pardon. And humans," she swallowed hard, eyes narrowing. "Humans are about to learn the meaning of that truth." The first figure stepped forward fully into the room's dim light. Its presence alone warped reality around it, shadows stretching unnaturally, walls bending in subtle, impossible ways. Emily's mind screamed at her to flee, yet she rooted herself to the spot, unwilling to abandon the truth she had fought to share. "Run," she urged the others, voice urgent. "There is still a chance. Go now." But as the figures advanced, she knew, deep down, that this was more than a simple escape. This was a reckoning. Humanity had been warned, had been given a choice. And humans had chosen to ignore it. The storm outside roared louder, matching the chaos inside, as if the heavens themselves conspired to witness what was coming. And in that moment, the message was clear: no pardon, no mercy, no second chance. Only the price that humans had so foolishly assumed they could avoid. Emily took a final, steadying breath. The world had tilted on its axis. And for the first time, she realized that the story they had been living, their comfortable, structured lives, was over. The warning had been ignored. The reckoning was here. The fluorescent lights flickered erratically, casting fractured shadows across the conference room. Rain lashed the glass walls of the Monrovia Corp building, turning the city outside into a kaleidoscope of chaos. Emily Carter pressed her back against the window, breathing shallow, trying to steady her racing heart. The figures that had emerged from the shadows earlier were no longer stationary, they moved with an unsettling grace, gliding rather than walking, their forms shifting as if reality itself recoiled from their presence. Michael Hayes, still clutching a shattered folder of reports, stammered beside her. "Emily, what are they?" She didn't answer immediately. There were no words that could convey the enormity of what was happening. These were not creatures of flesh and bone, not entirely anyway. Their presence distorted sound, light, even time itself, and Emily could feel the raw weight of intelligence behind their actions. They were calculating. Patient. Unforgiving. "They're the consequence," she said finally, voice tight, trembling. "We were warned. We ignored it. And now, this is the price." A low, resonant hum vibrated through the floor, one that seemed to echo within their bones. Emily's stomach churned. Every instinct screamed to flee, but the building's structure groaned under an invisible force, making the hallways treacherous. The junior scientist, a pale, wide-eyed man named David Sinclair, whispered from the corner, voice almost drowned out by the storm. "But, we can't fight them, can we?" Emily shook her head slowly. "No. Not with weapons. Not with numbers. Not with human ingenuity." She searched the room, looking for some advantage, some clue that could tip the scales. The console she had tried earlier flickered, but the interface was dead, unresponsive. These figures were beyond technology, beyond human comprehension. A sudden crash split the air. The walls shook violently as one of the figures pressed against the steel-framed door, causing the glass to spiderweb instantly. Everyone in the room fell back, panic clawing at their throats. Michael grabbed Emily's arm. "We need to get out." Emily's mind raced. There was a service elevator nearby, a stairwell that led to the lower levels, a chance, slim, but existing. "Follow me," she shouted, voice cutting through the rising panic. They bolted from the room, the storm's roar outside mingling with the pounding of their own hearts. The figures didn't chase in any human sense. They moved fluidly, almost teasingly, appearing at intersections before the humans even reached them. Each movement was deliberate, calculated to instill fear, to remind them of the inescapable truth: humans do not pardon, and neither would this. The stairwell was slick with rainwater leaking from broken seals above. Emily led the group downward, counting steps in a rhythm to keep her mind from unraveling. Behind them, the knocking returned, louder now, echoing through the building like a death knell. At the 10th floor, they were met with a new horror. The hallway stretched unnaturally, shadows bending at impossible angles. The figures hovered at intervals, their forms shimmering with a dark iridescence, shapes impossible to define fully. And yet, each carried an unmistakable intelligence, a knowing gaze that pierced through human minds. "Keep moving," Emily urged, trying to mask the terror in her voice. But the reality nodded her every instinct, every shred of human intuition screamed that they were running not toward safety, but deeper into the reckoning. As they descended further, the storm's power intensified. Thunder shook the city, lightning illuminating the hallways in strobing flashes, revealing brief, horrifying glimpses of the figures. One of them, a towering, jagged shape, paused at a stairwell landing, staring down at them. Its presence alone warped the air, the humans could feel it pressing in on their thoughts, making it difficult to focus, to remember who they were. David tripped over a loose tile, crying out. Emily grabbed his arm just in time. "Don't stop. Keep moving. Don't look back." But looking back was inevitable. Michael slowed, glancing over his shoulder. In the flickering light, one figure seemed to float effortlessly above the stairs, eyes, or what resembled eyes, glinting with cruel awareness. Michael's face drained of color. "God, they know everything." Emily's chest tightened. "Of course they do. That's why we were warned. We never had the chance to bargain, to explain, to make them understand. Humans never get a pardon for ignorance." The stairwell opened to the ground floor, but what they found there made them hesitate. The lobby had been torn apart as if an earthquake had passed through it. Ceiling tiles hung like jagged teeth, electrical wiring sparking dangerously. The storm's fury had infiltrated the building through shattered windows, rain pooling in enormous puddles across the marble floor. And standing in the center of the chaos were more of the figures, now fully visible, their forms twisting, their movements impossible to follow with human eyes. Michael gulped. "Emily, what do we do?" Emily swallowed hard. "We survive. We get out of the building. That's all we can do." They sprinted toward the lobby doors. The figures moved with them, always just a step or perhaps a thought ahead. Emily realized with chilling clarity that the rules of human pursuit did not apply here. These entities did not chase. They anticipated. They calculated. They exacted consequences. A sudden, high-pitched shriek filled the air, making the humans stumble. David fell forward, screaming as one of the figures swept past him. Emily grabbed him, yanking him to his feet. The other humans were crying now, terror paralyzing them, yet Emily forced herself to focus. Panic would not save them, clarity might. Finally, they reached the lobby doors. Emily's hands shook as she fumbled with the handle, rain and wind lashing through the broken glass. She pushed. Locked. Of course. The building's security had sealed them in human precautions against human threats. Now, ironically, they were useless against the inhuman. Emily backed away, her mind racing. There had to be another exit. Emergency stairwell. Loading docks. Something. Over here. Michael shouted, pointing to a service door partially hidden behind debris. The group surged forward, adrenaline pushing them past fear. Emily kicked the door open, revealing a narrow corridor leading to a freight elevator. It was cramped, dark, but it was a chance, a flicker of hope. They piled in. Emily hit the button for the basement. The doors shuttered closed, metal grinding against metal. Outside, the storm's roar continued, but inside, a tense silence settled. Then, as the elevator descended, the knocking returned. Not from the walls this time, but from the elevator itself. Slow. Deliberate. Measured. Emily felt her stomach drop. They weren't leaving yet. Not without a price. "They're testing us," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Seeing how far we'll go, how far humans can run before we stop running and face what we've ignored." The elevator shuddered violently, and the lights went out. Total darkness. Only the sound of rain, wind, and that relentless knocking filled their ears. Panic surged, but Emily forced herself to take slow, steady breaths. Survival was still possible, barely, but only if they stayed calm, stayed together, and most importantly, remembered the warning they had ignored. And somewhere, deep beneath the building, the figures waited, patient and unmoved by human fear, ready to exact the price of arrogance. The elevator jolted violently, steel groaning under forces it had never been designed to withstand. Darkness enveloped Emily Carter and the others, the only sounds the hiss of the storm outside and the relentless, omnipresent knocking that seemed to echo inside their very skulls. Michael Hayes, usually the picture of composure and authority, was now pale, trembling, muttering curses under his breath. David Sinclair pressed himself into the corner, eyes wide, silent tears streaking his face. Only Emily remained partially calm, her mind racing, cataloging every piece of knowledge she had ever gathered about these beings, searching for a sliver of leverage. "They are judges," she murmured, almost to herself. "Not hunters. Not killers in the traditional sense. They calculate consequences. They exact payment for ignorance." A groan of metal warned that the elevator was nearing its limit. The hum of the storm outside surged through the thick walls, lightning momentarily illuminating the cramped space, and in that flash, Emily saw them, the figures, impossibly distorted and enormous, pressing through the walls as if reality itself was paper to them. Their forms shifted like ink in water, fluid, impossible to fully comprehend, but their awareness was undeniable. "They don't forgive," Emily repeated, louder this time. "Humans never get a pardon." The elevator shuddered one final time, stopping abruptly between floors. The lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the walls. Silence followed. A silence heavier than any sound, oppressive and absolute. Then came the knocking right on the elevator walls, deep, resonant, as if the building itself had become the instrument of their judgment. Michael's voice cracked. "Emily, what do we do now?" Emily swallowed, her throat dry. There was no do left. No plan, no negotiation. Only understanding. We face it. We admit what we ignored. We acknowledge the consequences. David's whimpering grew louder. "You mean, we just wait?" "Yes," Emily said firmly, stepping into the center of the elevator, chest forward. "We face what we were warned about. We stop running. That's the only human action that matters now, acceptance." Another flash of lightning illuminated the elevator, and for the first time, the figures were fully visible, pressing against the walls, bending space with their presence. They didn't speak, yet Emily felt their awareness like a physical weight pressing into her chest. One form, taller and sharper than the rest, hovered closest. It shifted its mass slightly, tilting its shadow over the humans like an accusation. Emily squared her shoulders. "You warned us," she said, voice steady despite the fear. "We ignored it. We were blind. Now we understand." The figures paused. The knocking stopped. Time seemed to stretch and fold in on itself, the storm outside becoming distant, muted. In that moment of stillness, Emily realized the truth: the price was not immediate death, nor annihilation. It was understanding. It was confrontation. Humanity had believed ignorance absolved them. It did not. The figures demanded recognition. Acknowledgement. Michael swallowed hard. "So, that's it? We survive if we admit it?" Emily shook her head. "It's not survival. It's awareness. We can still die tomorrow, or the next minute. But if we deny, we invite destruction. Recognition is our only chance at mercy." The tallest figure shifted closer, its form warping impossibly. Emily's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stand tall. She could feel the attention, probing her mind, weighing every thought, every memory. Her chest ached as if the air itself were thickened by the gravity of consequence. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the figures withdrew from the walls, rising into the flickering shadows of the elevator shaft. Emily felt the air lighten slightly, the pressure around her chest easing.
The storm outside seemed to abate in response, though lightning still lanced through the city sky.
David whispered, They're leaving?
Emily nodded. For now. But we are marked. Humanity is marked. We were warned and ignored. And now we know the price. The elevator shuddered back to life, descending smoothly this time.
The doors opened to the lobby, which was wrecked but eerily silent. Rain fell through the broken glass in sheets, but there were no figures in sight.
The humans stumbled into the open air, hearts still hammering, minds grappling with the enormity of what had just occurred.
Michael turned to Emily, voice tight with awe and fear.
Do you think they'll come back?
Emily looked at the storm-swept city, rain dripping from shattered marble and twisted steel.
They always do. Humans forget too quickly. But they also wait. Patient. Calculating. They give warnings. They observe. And when ignored, they make us pay.
David shivered, voice barely audible.
So, what now? Emily took a deep breath, feeling the wind slice across her face. Now, we remember. Now, we teach.
Now, we live with the knowledge that nothing comes without consequence, and ignorance is the most dangerous gamble of all. The storm gradually began to abate, leaving a fragile, trembling calm in its wake. The city below was broken, scarred, but alive. And the humans who had survived, Emily, Michael, David, and the others, stood among the ruins, forever changed, their understanding forged in fear and revelation. Emily glanced once more toward the dark horizon, where the storm had passed but left its mark. Somewhere out there, beyond human comprehension, the figures waited.
Patient. Watchful. Immutable. And the lesson was clear: humanity's arrogance had a cost.
The warning had been real, the reckoning inevitable, and the price of ignorance eternal. She turned back to the group, her face set in determination.
We survived, she said quietly, but survival isn't forgiveness. It's a reminder. And we will never forget.
Above, the first rays of sunlight pierced the clouds, fragile and tentative, glinting off the rain-soaked city. The storm had passed, but the echoes of the reckoning lingered, etched deep into the minds of those who had seen what happens when humans ignore a warning. And somewhere, in the vastness beyond comprehension, a presence waited, patient, watching, reminding the world that nothing, especially human arrogance, ever goes unpunished.